Good evening, and you're very welcome to yet another episode of the Women's League of Ireland podcast here on finalwhistle.ie with myself, Breifne Earley, and of course, as always, the WNL shows Aaron Clarke. Aaron, it's episode 19 of season 4, so it feels like it's been forever. I think we're well over the 100 episodes at this point, but it's been a while. We haven't had an episode in a week or two. Have you been in that period? I know we've both been fairly busy. There's been so much action to get through, both league action and, of course, last weekend's Cup Quarter Finals as well. Some big games to talk about. What have you been up to for the last couple of weeks?
It's been a manic few weeks. You take a couple of days off the day job, and you feel like you're worse aware even for just having a few days off. It's been a hectic old time. Probably haven't got as much football in as I'd liked over that period, but enjoyed a good one on Monday night.
Yeah, of course, that was Shels against Shamrock Rovers in Tallaght Stadium. Cup quarter final. I think we'd all kind of talked about the possibilities of Shamrock Rovers giving themselves a lift. We know they lost the Avenir Sports Cup final a couple of weeks ago at the same venue. I kind of fancy them to maybe take a scalp on Monday night, and this came oh so close. An OG from a former co-host of this particular show back in season 1, Stephanie Zambra. Feel for her, because there's very little she could do about that. She went to try and clear it and just sliced off her into the back of the net. And I think Shels would be happy, given they were down to 10 players for so long in that game after Pearl's dismissal. We'll hear from Owen Weir later in the show. I know you spoke to him after the match, but your thoughts on the game? Shels lucky to get through, or did they deserve it and just kind of made hard work of it?
Where do I start? There's so much even off the field in terms of Colin O'Neill's post-game reaction. Probably surprised me a little bit. Shels probably deserved to get through just on the pure basis that Shamrock Rovers did not create enough chances. The chances they did create, like you look at some of the efforts that they did have, they were looping headers. Ella Kelly probably had their best chance when she hit the woodwork. Fiona Owens had a looping header up into the box, but they didn't really make Amanda McQuillan make an actual save. That was probably, I think, the most disappointing thing from a Rovers viewpoint. In the first half, I was actually so shocked how easy Shamrock Rovers were cut apart at the back. Like every time Shels kept going, Roman McLaughlin and Alex Kavanagh, with Maggie Pearson, Rachel Graham sitting deeper, allowed the two of them to go forward, and they just cut Rovers apart. Every time Savannah McCarthy had the ball, it seemed as though Shels only had a full court press on and had an awful lot of success from it. And it was the first time seeing Rovers like that. Like you look at Shels, you probably think going in 0-0 at half time, extremely disappointed to be 0-0. Christy Gray had a great chance, and then Rowan McLaughlin's one-on-one with Amanda Budden and doesn't even find a target. You're thinking two massive chances, and then obviously the red card comes, it changes the game a little bit. Shels sort of have to adapt a little bit, but I'll tell you one thing I've said on this show many times, and I'll say it again. Maggie Pearce is just an absolute smashing baller. She was having the game of her life in midfield, and then when she goes into centre back, just looks so comfortable again, especially considering she played there a lot last year. And like even with the 10 players, I felt Rovers struggled to really break Shelbourne down. And that was probably really disappointing from them, because I expected an awful lot more from them in terms of like the changes that Colin O'Neill made. It's obvious to everybody that Jamie Thompson is sort of on the periphery now, isn't really a major impactor for them anymore. Didn't come off the bench. Emily Corbett also didn't come off the bench as well. And like especially when you're coming towards a penalty shootout, you think maybe you might throw them players on, and it was looking like it was going to penalties. I know you're saying you feel for Stephanie Zamber, but you have to just ask the question is, what was Scarlett Heron doing on the edge of the box there, actually giving that free kick away? Megan wasn't going anywhere. There was no need for it. There wasn't a bunch of Shelbourne players in the box, and it was just a rash challenge. And when I spoke to Megan after the game, she said from that angle I wasn't scoring. She said the only thing I could do is drive it low across the box and hope it gets a bit of a nick. And that's exactly what it did. You feel for Steph because she's the one who it comes off, but it was driven with that much pace. It was one of them that it was always going to be dangerous.
Of course, that puts them into a semi-final and one step away from, I think, definitely the third, possibly fourth final in a row. They've been at this stage a lot.
Well, it would be fourth because they lost to Wexford, then they beat Athlone, then they lost Athlone.
So, of course, that does set up for a 3 in a row meeting of those two sides. If the league table is to be believed, the Shels and Athlone both through. We'll talk about the Athlone game in a moment. They had a 2-1 win down the Markets Field against Treaty United. Again, maybe some shots that defenders and goalkeepers won't want to see again from a Treaty point of view in that game. Sligo Rovers, their first competitive, we'll call it domestic win of the season. I know they had a win in the FAI Cup earlier in the season, but they're through now to a semi-final. It belies their league form. They'll be quite happy 3-1 winners in DLR, but again, the suspicion of handball maybe around the first one's very hard to tell from the video angle we had, but I would probably err on the side of it being a handball. Can't quite see if maybe Muireann Devaney got her foot up to that or if it came off either her or the defender's hand. It's very hard to tell from the single camera angle at a distance from behind both players. Second one, DLR are not going to be happy having conceded from a corner. Goalkeeper takes 2 or 3 steps forward, goes in over her head. Player on the back post, probably 6 inches too short for a player to be on the back post. Disappointing from their point of view. And then, of course, even though they got a very good goal back straight away, Sligo ended it with a fairly straightforward, well, actually a great goal from Paul McGrory at the end. From their point of view, Tommy would be delighted now. It's not in the league. It doesn't show on the league table, but, you know, Sligo in history have always been a solid cup team on the men's side of the house. Second semi-final in a row. They're up against it, against Athlone, is that fair to say, in the semi-final? They got fairly well beaten last year at this stage by Athlone.
I think a lot of people would have, if you were to look at things, you'd probably say DLR are big favourites going into that quarter final, and would probably deserve to be, considering they've beaten Peamount recently in the league as well. But like, it's the lure of the cup, and Tommy Ewart just tends to love pulling a result out of a rabbit, out of a hat, nearly in Dublin in particular. You've seen it earlier in the season with Shels. He's done it time and time again that he's been able to get results in these sort of one-off games. And like you say, the first goal, yeah, it is potential, it looks as potentially a handball there, but you have to play on till the ref blows the whistle, and it's a nice enough finish. And then the second goal, as you say, it's disappointing from the Waves viewpoint. And third goal, could they potentially stop that? Potentially, but from a Waves viewpoint, it's just that inconsistency of, you know, you win a game against the Peamount, and then all of a sudden you go in a game you're expected to win and you don't get it. But for Sligo, it's a massive boost, it's a massive lift. It's been a difficult league season for them to get to it. Cup semi-final, they've got to be really, really pleased, and the fact that they come away with a 3-1 victory as well. Like, for them, it's small steps. You'd like to see, can they turn that sort of into a league result, but it's baby steps for them at the minute for me.
I suppose taking the positives out of maybe from the Laura Heffernan side of the house in terms of DLR Waves, probably scored the best goal of the game. Of the 4, probably the best worked play was that move down the right-hand side and that cross in for DLR to strike it home 30 seconds after they conceded the second. It's a great time to score.
Yeah, but the thing is, Laura will tell you that's irrelevant if we don't win the game of football. That's the other side when it's
I'm clutching at straws, Aaron.
But especially when you're looking at the likes of Shels and Rovers meeting in the quarter final, Peamount and Galway already out of the cup. There's massive opportunities for these other teams. Granted, the draw probably didn't go the way they would have wanted it, but there's still massive opportunities over one game affair. And so, like, I think for Waves, I think that's one thing that Laura probably wants to get away from, is that, you know, the clutching at straws always scored a good goal, because she's seen what her side can do. She'll say it herself in terms of consistency probably not being where they wanted that, because they're capable of doing things like that or having spells like that. They just need to have that for longer periods and sort of control games that they're supposed to control and get the results they're supposed to get. But there's no doubt that DLR have definitely taken massive steps on. I do think Sligo have taken an awful lot of confidence. I know it was Terranure who were a junior side at that stage, but that win against Terranure definitely gave them a bit of confidence. And then to back it up with the win against DLR, like, for me, it's the sort of results that Tommy Ewart will say he should be getting. You know, he hasn't been getting them, and like, the league doesn't lie. It's been a really difficult season for them, and if they can go and put in a good performance against the cup, like, it's not a good season, but it takes a bit of the sting off it by getting to a cup semi-final and potentially past that if they have another excellent performance.
How much do you think it would mean to the likes of Tommy and Murndavani at Athlone last season? Tommy, albeit not quite for the full season, to pull one over on Athlone in the semi-final. Is it realistic? Can it be done?
It'd be massive. It'd be a massive thing for them. Can it be done? The thing is, in order for that to be done, Athlone have to probably play at a 6 out of 10, and Sligo have to be a 10 out of 10. Like if Athlone play at a 7, 8 out of 10, Athlone should win that game. But it's only if Sligo can keep them at that 6 out of 10 and have that perfect game. The great thing about the cup is we a couple of years ago when Cork City beat Wexford Youth team who were flying. Nobody expected they beat them 3-2. Nobody expected that to happen. Like we've seen in the cup that shocks can happen. I wouldn't say there's a high probability of a shock happening, but on the day anything can really happen, and it all depends on what Sligo Rovers turn up. Having a home game as well is obviously an advantage, not having to go and play on the Astro, but you'd have to make Athlone overwhelming favourites.
Yeah, Sligo do turn out in great numbers for cup semi-finals over the years on the men's side. They had a good crowd there last year for the correspondent fixture, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out again this year. On the other half of the draw, of course, we mentioned that Shels and Cork City will do battle in that side of the draw. Cork City themselves, let's talk about why maybe the argument that we should make all games just 30 minutes knockout, because the first 90 minutes of that game was, let's be honest, it was a tough watch. I sat.
Breifne, I'm going to stop you for a second. Same thing happened in the league game.
Okay.
Both the ending of the league game was the exact same in Turner's Cross, the one that was on the television. I actually spoke to Ken Kiernan on Monday night in Tallaght Stadium, and he was like, as much as we're nearly Peamount's bogey team, considering them getting results off Peamount, he says Cork seem to be ours. That's 3 times this season these sides have met. Cork City have won all of them.
Yeah.
Bohs haven't beaten Cork this year. And you started thinking that in that game, O'Mahony's strike, okay, how
good was? Let's talk about that for a minute. Before we go into the ins and outs of previous games, let's talk about that. She's obviously just moved to Cork this year. She had a bit of time at Rovers. It didn't quite work out for her. She's been on the radar for a while at underage international level. She pretty much, like, we've known about her, we've talked about her before on air and off air, but for me, that strike was her arrival into the big time in terms of this a big game. We're underdogs in this match, even though they have that winning record against Bohs this year. And when it mattered, just on that edge of halftime in extra time, she popped up to put Cork ahead from 30, 35 yards, and there was no stopping that shot. No keeper saving that.
No, and the funny thing about it is we've known she's had that in her locker as well, and Bohs would have known she had that in her locker as well, and like you can't give her that yard or two of space and expect her not to try her luck from there. Like she's a smashing striker of a football, and when that strike leaves, I was otherwise engaged at the weekend. I was at the American football, and I remember you texted me and you sent to me, and I'm just like, wow, and that's the sort of thing that you're expecting from a player like O'Mahony, similar to a Freya Demand. They've got that sort of capability to do that. But like the funny thing is, and like as you say before going into the ins and outs of it, a lot of the goals that Cork tend to score against Bohs this year tend to be bangers, tend to be absolute bangers. Like Eve Mangan's goal in Dalymount, superb strike. You look at the goal to win it against them live on TG Carr as well, the build-up play and then the strike from the edge of the box. They just tend to score lovely goals against Bohs, and I feel for Rachel Kelly because Rachel Kelly has probably kept Bohs in a lot of games this year, but some of them strikes she hasn't been able to get near, and you don't want to turn around and say, what, if a goalkeeper was taller or if this or that, because I think you need to give O'Mahony the full credit for the actual strike itself, because I can't see. I would struggle to see any goalkeeper in the league saving that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think as well, we're looking at Cork having a relatively good season based on league position compared to previous seasons where they've struggled. They've been bottom 2 or 3 year in, year out. They're mid-table this year. They're comfortably mid-table in that kind of spot with Bohs. They've got a cup semi-final now. Are we seeing the shoots of something maybe exciting happening in Cork with these really exciting young players, the likes of Eva Mangan, the likes of O'Mahony coming through, and really making an impression this year? those two in particular have really stood out for me. But there's probably another half dozen that have kind of come through and broken into that first team as well.
Yeah, I think so. But like, when's the last time we started seeing Cork that high up the table? The one thing that's scary from a Cork viewpoint for me, and it is concerning, is the fact that although they're sitting in 7th place with more points than they would have got all of last season, they're still minus 15 goals. So when they leak goals, they can tend to leak them in bunches, like we've seen against the likes of Shels this year. Where I don't want to say it's a fear factor, but it's a good going into them sort of games. They make a mistake, they can get punished 1-2. Whereas when they're playing against the likes of a DLR, like they've been very good against Shamrock Rovers this year. They've got some very good results against Rovers this year, some good results against Bohs, push Peamount all the way in PRL Park, and obviously got the result in push Peamount all the way in Turner's Cross and got the result in PRL Park. Like, we'd be talking years gone by saying if Cork can hold in that game and lose that game by a goal or two, it's a good result. Now we're sort of talking about, can Cork go and get a result, which is a massive difference. It's we're talking about them, can they get the result rather than can they hold on for a moral defeat, which is massive, and it's a massive difference. It's I think a lot was spoken about at the start of the season with the sort of players that Danny Murphy had released, and we still clamour back to you thinking some of them players would have been lifeblood Cork City fans, being involved with Cork City, but he'd obviously identified a reason why he wanted to make the changes, and there's no doubt there was a bit of pressure under him for making them changes this season, and I think he got a bit of a reward for that, for the fact that he's been able to sort of stand over and say, well, listen, we're getting results this year, we're doing a lot better this year than we were last year, we're in the Cup semi-final again. Granted, they have a difficult time in the Cup semi-final. Like, they have won a cup in the last 10 years. Like, you have to think about that. They have won when they beat DLR and UCD. It was UCD. It was UCD Waves at the time in the Aviva. Granted, the last cup final didn't go the way they would have wanted, losing to Peamount during COVID. But they have been there, and they're the sort of team that nowadays, when they go up to play a Shelbourne in a cup semi-final, you're going to be wondering, can they keep Shels tight for 60, 70 minutes and then sort of get into that bit of a dogfight and get into the trenches. Like, Pearl Slattery will be suspended for the semi-final, having picked up 2 yellow cards as well. So she will miss the semi-final for Shels. But I think from a Cork viewpoint, listen, it's another step in the right direction. It's another positive, and they done well to react as well when Bohs scored, when Katie Malone scored for Bohs, that they went and actually got the winner again and didn't just sort of settle for the penalty shootout. And I think it's a real positive for Cork City, and so much good things that they can take from it.
We'd love to bring you details of how Katie Malone scored that goal, but unfortunately, because of the issues with Wi-Fi or whatever in Turner's Cross, that broadcast just stalled for that brief second. It's not in the highlights either, unfortunately. But Bohs did come back very, very early in that second period of extra time, but it was late, 2 minutes into injury time, when Barrett Edison found the back of the net to win it for Cork. They absolutely snatched it. Bohs were probably the better side, I think, at that stage of the game, but Cork just found that little extra bit of space and won it at the death, avoided penalties as well, much like Shels, I suppose, in their semi-final. You did catch up after the Shels victory in Tallaght Stadium on Monday night with their manager. Maybe let's hear from him now, if you want to intro this, Aaron.
Yeah, I had a good chat with Owen Warren. You can imagine he was on highs, especially considering that a difficult defeat against Athlone the week before, and it was a difficult game for them, and he was happy with his team's performance. Maybe he thought he could have done a little bit more in the first half.
Let's hear from Owen.
What a night. You play a lot of that game with 10 players, you win it late. How do you sum it up?
It's hard to, I said that to the players after the game. I don't think there's words necessarily to describe it. I think, again, the pride that I have in every single one of them, it's not about myself, the staff, even the club at times, that they, as players, they're so close, they've been through a lot together, that they owe it to themselves to dig in deep and leave it out on the pitch, and I think we got our rewards in the end. I know you won the game, but are you a little bit disappointed that you didn't do it a little bit more comfortably, especially considering that spell you had in the first half where it was just mind-boggling attacking, but you just couldn't find the net? Yeah, look, I think, we probably had 3 or 4 really good chances in the first half, and if you take 1 or 2, you're in a great position coming in at half time, and but against good sides like Rovers, it just shows you one decision. Whether it was a sending off, I don't think the second one was a yellow. The first one, yeah, it was, but I thought the second one was really soft, and it can change the game, and we learned a lot about ourselves after that. We had to change system 2 or 3 times once we made subs, and I think it's one of those nights where this team gets a lot of plaudits for the great footballers that we have. You can go right through the team and the squad, but as characters and as people, there's warriors in that dressing room, and I think that showed in the end.
You look at the way at times some people might say, looking from the outside, you weren't necessarily attacking, you were nearly sitting back in and letting them. But even at that, you were limiting the chances that they had. They had some chances in extra time where they hit the post, they hit the woodwork, but you limit them to where Amanda didn't have to actually make significant saves. That must be the most pleasing part, especially with the 10 players or so long.
Yeah, look, before extra time in particular, we spoke about this wasn't a case where we wanted to sit in for 30 minutes and hang on for dear life for penalties. It was finding the right balance between being compact, being disciplined, forcing them into areas where we wanted them to go, so still being in control of the game even if we didn't have the ball, because we knew that they'd have the lion's share of that. And I thought we found that balance, but we also made sure, with Noelle and Gemma on the pitch, that we found a threat the opposite way, and you could see that with Gemma's chance to hit the post, and it was those moments that we were looking for, and as I said, it goes back to the quality. Once you have those players on the pitch, whether you have 9 players, 10 players, they can produce moments of magic, and luckily Megan did that for us in the end.
Did you think that Gemma chance was in?
Yeah, we did. I'd have to say it again, but it looked like it was a save, was it? I'm not too sure, but it looked like, I think she might have got a touch on it, which was an unbelievable save, because Gemma did everything that you'd ask for on a centre forward. Hits it across goal, make sure that she hits the target. But look, overall, I think we've got what we deserve tonight. And do I think at times we can play better in possession? Absolutely, but that was a moment in the season that hopefully that we can use as a springboard now and really push on in the next 2 months.
Megan Smith-Lynch, the last time she played in this pitch, she was being carted off because she'd hurt her knee, and she was out for quite a long. Yeah. What does that sort of say about her mentality, coming on and the way, because she said to me, she'd sort of seen by the way they were lined up, and she knew she'd have to do something to sort of drive it into the. What does that say about her mentality, especially because she's been sitting on watching that for so long, and a creative player, and takes that opportunity? Yeah,
look, I think first of all, Megan's such a fantastic footballer, technically unbelievable ability. Great left foot, she's a winner, she's got desire, but the one thing that I think separates Megan from a lot of players is the brain. She's got an unbelievable footballing brain, and you talk about that character and mentality, but also her decision making on the ball. She's a coach away from playing with us, so you can see that she's a real leader for us, and even when she hasn't been on the pitch the last 6 or 7 months, she's been a huge impact in the dressing room, particularly with her relationship with the younger players, and it's great to have her back out there and being able to make a difference.
You've seen glimpses of what the Shels fans can do. Tonight, how much did that help? Especially, and you see the scenes at full time, because they come out here and they make massive roars for the entire 120 minutes.
Yeah. I actually, before a ball was even kicked, before the game, you could hear them singing and chanting, and it really does spur on the players. It's not a case where they can hardly hear them, or whether it's a couple of hundred, that noise makes a massive difference. Especially when you have your backs against the wall and you're in difficult moments. It can be that, okay, you lose a player, but your 11th player can nearly be the fans in those moments, and I definitely think that was the case tonight, and I just hope that they realise the impact that they played. They played their part tonight, and hopefully they'll keep coming out in their forces, because it does make a difference.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And that was you chatting to Owen Wearin after the game on Monday night. Thoughts going into the semi-final? Is it hard to see past, based on league form, a repeat of the last 2 finals? Athlone and Shels go head-to-head for the 3rd time in a row.
Just before we do that, we haven't really touched on Treaty and Athlone in terms of the goals itself.
Sure.
I will do that first, and then I'll give you that. For me, Athlone will just be delighted to be in the semi-final. No Casey Howe, no Chloe Singleton, 2 big players not playing for them, and to go down to Treaty and get a win, I think was massive for them, to back up that Shels win the week previous, where it was harrowing being in Talca Park that day when Chloe did get injured, and sort of to see that from Athlone, I think shows a lot of character. I think you look at the I think it was the first goal from Athlone.
For Brenda.
Yeah, I think the goalkeeper can do better from it.
It was a good cross from Oisin Malloy, and she's been pivotal to a lot of the good stuff that they've done over the last couple of years. I know Chloe and Casey have got a lot of the plaudits over the last few seasons, but for me, the wing play of Malloy on the right and Madison Gibson on the left has been integral to their season, really.
I'm going to say something controversial. You're not going to like this. I don't think Gibson has been half as effective this year as she was last year. I think Gibson last year for them was much more effective. I don't know if it's just the way Kieran McDuff is implementing the style but I do agree with you. I think Roisin Malloy has been there or thereabouts. She's probably in the running for Athlone's Player of the Year this year. I think while Madison Gibson, listen, I think maybe that's just me judging Maddie Gibson on the high standards that we've seen of her and the consistent performances we've seen of her last year. Whereas maybe this year, I felt even in the Shels game, she wasn't in as much as she could have been in it. She's
only hit found the net twice this season. But I make it in the League and Cup anyway. I'm not quite sure about
because when I watched her against Shels, she had the Shels defense in her pocket, and she tried too often to do first time crosses, do things like that. Whereas she'd so much time and to sort of pick a player and things like that. I just didn't find her. The times I've seen her as effective this year as she was last year, but that doesn't mean like
it's not because she's a threat though now, where she's maybe get a bit of extra attention from defenders.
Yeah,
she's creating space for the others. The likes of Kerry-Ann Brown, Casey have come into that team. They both hit the ground running. A lot of it down to the space and the provision of assists, I suppose, from the likes of Maddie Gibson and Malloy on both wings. Like it's a fairly formidable front four for that Athlone side. One they could have only dreamed of maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago.
I had to laugh. You've just mentioned Kerry-Ann Brown. It's the one player we don't talk about enough, I don't think. I think that the calmness for the penalty against Shelbourne when you're into the Ballybock end, the Shels Ultras are down there. You know, you can I don't know if you've seen the photo I posted on social media of where they're making signs, they're shouting, they're jeering. She just stood there, cool, calm and composed. And found the net. I think in Athlone are just showing that they're going from strength to strength this year and they're continuing to improve. They probably won't have Chloe Singleton for the rest of the season. But how far Athlone can go remains to be seen. Top of the league, they're in pole position in the cup semi-final. To answer your other question, while I do think Treaty were good, it's difficult to see past Athlone versus Shels in the final. It's difficult to see any other result. Like if you had to look at the two games and to sort of say who's the most likely to cause an upset, you'd probably say Cork. But the only way Cork can cause an upset is if, like it said about Sligo Rovers against Athlone, Shels have to be a 6 out of 10 and Cork have to be that 10 out of 10 performance, because the amount of times that Cork have sort of just let Shels concede that 2-3, score that 2-3-4 goals and make the games very comfortable while they've been competitive in them. It's just, I think Cork just need to have that start, and if they can get the Shels at 60 minutes where it's 0-0, they're still in the game, they've got a chance. I think it's going to be difficult for both Cork and Sligo to make a cup semi-final, if I'm being honest.
Cup final. You're already in the semi-final. But in terms of how good is it for the league and the women's football at this level in the country as a whole that we have a discussion about 2 teams in the bottom half of the table against 2 teams in the top 2 spots in the table, and we're giving them any kind of a chance? Because 3-4 years ago, again, I don't think we'd have put them within 5 or 6 goals. Not these specific teams, but teams in those league positions. We'd have expected a 5-0 victory for the top of the league, in this case Athlone, versus the side bottom of the league, in this case Sligo Rovers. We wouldn't have given them a hope in hell, but now we're kind of saying it is a possibility, and we're saying that week in, week out about virtually every fixture in the league, which has to be only a positive for the game.
Granted, Shels knocked Galway and Shamrock Rovers out of the cup. Cork went and beat Bohs, who beat Peamount. You know, it's not even a case of saying, like, that's the thing, it's the sort of case of, it's not going to be a case that a lot, like, 80% of games, you're going to call it. You're going to think a team is going to win, and you'll probably get them right. But there's that chance now that it's not going to happen. Whereas, as you say, years ago, like we used to have the conversation, it used to be how many.
Yeah, exactly.
And that used to infuriate me because the gap was getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. Like there's nothing better than seeing Cork and Sligo Rovers in the semi-finals. Likewise, if it had been DLR and Cork in the semi-finals, great, brilliant. It's great for the league. It's great for the league. Like there's only two. Well, it's like I'll rephrase that. There's only one of the original so-called big three, big four in Shelbourne. There's no Wexford. There's no Peamount. Granted, we're now seeing Athlone now emerge as one of them top three teams. Galway emerge as another one of them top three, top four teams. Whereas the traditionalists for many years, like when the National League first started up, it was until Cork had beaten UCD Waves in the cup final, apart from the Shield, which was won once by UCD Waves when they beat Galway, which was used as a competition during international windows. None of the major cups were won outside of, well, Raheny, Shelbourne, because call them one because they merged, then Peamount and Wexford. Where now we're starting to see that more and more teams are winning these cup competitions, and like the last thing you want is to see a league starting and you're like, okay, there's only going to be a chance of two teams winning the league or two teams doing something. Like I still go back to the show we had before the start of last season, and I said to you, and I'm on the record and saying it, anybody who wants to pull up the show, I thought Galway with the signs they made would finish last.
Yeah,
look what you know what I mean. And I said that.
I'm pretty sure I heard it and I know for sure you heard it back from Phil Drill.
But you know what I mean. I said that, and I wasn't afraid to say that, and I wasn't afraid to. And whereas Galway've gone and proved us wrong. Likewise, you look at when Athlone as well. You think, okay, they lose the likes of Jess Hennessy, they're going to slip off the boil. They're not going to contend. No, when Kieran Uncle Duff come in, they were probably the most informed team in the second half of last season, and like the more the merrier we're seeing winning competitions, because then that means the competition within the league is getting even greater and getting even harder, and that's when it makes better for the league.
You talked about goal difference earlier in the year and how big some of those goal differences are. To this point, obviously everything can change at any given week, but we have no team that has scored more than 2 goals on average, and the lowest concession is 2 goals on average. I think DLR and possibly Sligo and one maybe other team have conceded 2 goals a game on average. That's
DLR the only one. I think DLR the only one to concede an average of 2 goals per game.
That's Sligo, 26-13. So it is.
13,
yeah, it's the same. So and they're the two bottom sides on the league table, having fairly rough seasons that we've talked about from time to time, and yet their goal difference compared to maybe previous games where you might have seen I won't name names, but you might have seen the bottom side having a -5 or -6.
Listen, I'll name them because because they deserve the credit. No, they deserve credit. Because we talked about last year with Treaty going from a -100 on goal difference to -50. They're now only -1 where they're -1 after 14 games.
Yeah, like you have to credit that. Like you have to credit that with the progress they made.
It's 2 massive strides in 2 years from Treaty. If the funny thing is, Cork sitting on -15 in 7th place. Like Bohs are -6. Like in 6th place, like Shamrock Rovers are a plus goal difference. Like it's mental, and I don't think that's the big thing this year is goal difference doesn't tell the full story, and that's the big thing. Like absolutely. Whereas previous years goal difference, you would see the team at the bottom would have the worst, or the second bottom team would have the worst, and you'd see it sort of go that way. Whereas now it's not necessarily. Goal difference is a bit of a mad one, because even Peamount, to your point there of conceding goals, like Peamount, who are sitting in 4th place, have conceded 18 goals. Like you look at Wexford, Shamrock Rovers, Treaty have conceded less goals, and like it's one of them that it's a mad league because teams are picking up results and they're getting results regularly against the teams, and that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it exciting. Like, and
Speaking of Peamount and goal difference, of course, they were the only side in action this weekend, or the only tie in action this weekend. They faced the trip down to Galway. We've seen some humdingers of games between Galway and Peamount over the years. A lot of these girls know each other quite well, maybe from colleges football down the years, or they've played together. I'm thinking specifically 3 of the 4 goal scorers in terms of Julianne Russell, who got 2, and Karen Duggan, who did get a consolation laid on for Peamount in a 3-1 defeat. They would have been teammates both at UCD Waves back in that cup final you talked about. I think they both featured for UCD in that game, but also would have been together for 2 or 3 seasons, maybe 4 seasons in colleges football down in UL.
They also would have played together for Peamount. They would have been together with Peamount under
Royal Yeah, absolutely, they would have. They know each other very, very well, you know. And of course, Ireland internationals together as well over the years. So a lot of players in this league know each other quite well. Galway, as they've done fairly regularly in this encounter over the last few seasons, came out on top. 2 first half goals, 1 on the quarter hour from Julianne Russell, a second on the half hour, followed up by Emma Doherty just before the hour mark to put them 3-0 up, and it took until the 95th minute for Peamount to pull one back. It's not great preparation for Peamount. They've pretty much ended, although not mathematically, but let's face it, they're 5 games to go, 12 points behind. It's highly unlikely they're going to feature in the title race this year. So their attention is now turned completely, I'd imagine, to the Champions League, which is just over 10 days away, maybe 2 weeks away. And they face a trip to a place
a week away. Only a week away. They fly out on
4th of September.
They fly out on Sunday or Monday. Well,
yeah. So 4th, I think it's the 4th of September is the fixture next week. So
next Wednesday, 6 days.
And it's to a fairly, like, when I was with St. Francis back, it's 14 years ago now, but we played in that stadium in that ground in Osijek, in the east of Croatia. It's well inland, but 4 hours east 4 hours east of the capital.
They're flying to Budapest.
Okay, yeah, because it's on the Hungary, Serbia, Croatia border, effectively, just over that little kind of on the right angle of Osijek. Lovely little town. I've been there 2 or 3 times since as well. Great little town. They love their football. There's be a partisan crowd. The home side are
they're playing the Belarusians first.
Yeah, and that'll be a challenge. But it's going to be an interesting time. And of course, the Champions League is always one that throws up chances for the Irish team to progress. You don't have to be doing well domestically to do well at that level, but it definitely helps.
Yeah, but it's different this year. Don't forget the Champions League is different now since COVID with the semi-final and final. There's no group stage anymore if you play 3 games. I'm going to pivot slightly because we're talking Galway, and I want to ask this question. I was chatting to Daryl Garrity, who does a lot of work for the likes of RTE in Tallaght on Monday, and we were having a conversation about Player of the Year. Surely Julianne Russell has to be the hot favourite now. Like, we were talking about the likes of Maggie Pearce, the way number 6s don't tend to get.
Like, I agree. I think Julianne Russell is definitely in the conversation. I think Maggie Pearce is in the conversation. I think if you take Julianne's international appearances out of it, I don't know if she's as high. She's had a fantastic season, but I don't know if she's a standout winner of that award yet. She's definitely in the conversation. I think Casey Howe has to be in that discussion as well, because her early form was scintillating. If you look back to the first 3 or 4 weeks, like, Casey Howe was unplayable in those few weeks, as was Maddie Gibson. I think she scored 2 in the first 4 weeks to really set this up.
Singleton has been unbelievable for Athlone this year.
I think they've been phenomenal. I think you probably, this is controversial given the way we've just spoken about them, but I think Karen Duggan has personally had a better season this year than she had last year. She's popped up with more goals. She's had a bigger impact on games, and she was phenomenal last year.
Good news. I hear South Dublin is close. Last year's Player of the Year. She's only played 25 minutes all season.
Excellent. That's great news to hear. I think Eva Mangan has impressed in spots for Cork City, probably a bit too far down the league table to be considered for a Player of the Year nomination. After that, there's probably not really much in the way of that, but I think we're in and around where I expect those nominations to be. Anyone else?
Jenna Slarry started very well. Started going off a little bit, but can still regain it. I think that the running is going to be massive. But just in terms of this game, like, this is a massive win for Galway, considering they went on that run where they lost 3 on the bounce. One of them being against Peamount. They lost Peamount. They lost to the Peamount, Shels. Who was the other one they lost? Wexford. They lost it in a row, and then they sort of bounced back. They have 2 league wins in a row. I think this was an important result for them. Granted, when people look at the league table, they're still they're still 9 points behind Shels and 9 points behind Athlone, 6 points behind Shels. But they've 2 games in hand over Athlone. They still have to play Athlone on the final day of the season. They still have to play Shelbourne. Like, there's so much football left to play. And like when you look at the fixtures in the run-in, Shell's last 3 games are Galway, Peamount, and Shamrock Rovers. Like Athlone's last game being Galway, being Galway United in Galway. Like there's so much football left to play. And what impressed me most from the Athlone camp when they beat Shels in the league was when they said, listen, it's only 3 points. There's a lot more football left to play. And they weren't getting carried away that they'd won the league, because they're fully aware that, you know, there's a lot to go. You say Peamount, yeah, their season is probably, it's going to peter out. The question is can they retain that 4th place? That's probably what they're looking to do. But Wexford have 2 games in hand over them. Even Bohs have a game in hand over them. If Bohs win their game in hand, they go to within a point of them. Like, I think it's going to be difficult for Peamount to hold that 4th place. Shamrock Rovers this weekend. My question to you, Breifne, in terms of Shamrock Rovers game this weekend is, if you're James O'Callaghan, what do you do? Because you obviously don't want to risk any players getting injured.
Yeah, I think you have to prioritize the European games, not just for. I think the chances of them getting out of the European group are slim. It's very tough to get out of that level. Only 1 or 2 teams have ever done it in Irish women's teams' history. Some teams have come close, but haven't quite managed to get across the line. Peamount are one of those teams. There are still some players floating around the league from that particular event, but I suppose Julianne Russell would have been in that. She's now at Galway. Anya and Steph are at Shamrock Rovers. They've really only got Karen Duggan. Apologies if I've forgotten somebody who was involved in that team back then. So
the only other person will be Emma Donoghue, who is now in the coaching staff.
Coaching staff, of course, yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how they get on. I think for the benefit of the club going forward, I think they have to prioritize the European experience, because if you're looking at the league, there's nothing really, whether they win or lose, other than bragging rights and a bit of pride against maybe former players and the local rivalry that comes with all of that as well. That might be the only reason you prioritize the Shamrock Rovers thing. If you look at it realistically, though, a big result in Europe, maybe a win in either one of the games, could give them something to really hang their hat on for the season, because it's been a relatively poor season based on the standards that they've set themselves over the last 5 or 6 years. So I think they have to maybe not necessarily throw the game out. I'd never put a team out to do that, but prioritize the players maybe who might be at risk of picking up an injury or picking up a bit of, I don't know, a bit of a knock or niggle. I would let some of the other girls play this week and not risk maybe the more fragile players in the squad.
So what you're saying is don't play Karen Duggan?
No, I don't think Karen Duggan will ever qualify in anyone's book as a fragile player. But I think, yeah, you don't risk an opportunity to do some damage in Europe. Getting to a group stage, or through the group stage, or the early qualifying stage of this into the first round, not proper, could be huge for an Irish club if they were to do it now, when there's a bit more extra publicity around the games. There's bigger profile of the players, there's bigger profile of the teams, and there's a TV presence as well. I think that's got to be the priority. James, Peamount will have different priorities, but I think if I was in that position, that's what I'd be pushing for.
Interesting. The social media seems to say, you going by social media, you think they're going to go all guns blazing for Shamrock Rovers this week, because everyone's talking about game changers, and the comment that Jason Carey said last year. I think he's probably going to regret that comment now, because it seems as though every team that plays Shamrock Rovers, it's the one thing they constantly bring up, or they constantly mention. Like even the spitefulness, and I love, you're gonna say you love it, is when Shamrock Rovers posted a picture saying enjoying themselves in Talca Park after beating Shels in the All Ireland Cup, and then Shels literally posted a photo with the same caption of their players from the other day, and like it's sort of getting, it's sort of getting to the stage now where, you know, I think there's a lot of this even there's a lot of animosity even in that game, that I don't know if Peamount will really ever want to sort of not go full strength. And that's where my concern is, that they may do that, and then if they pick up a knock, you're looking at the Champions League being like, oh, should we have done something different?
They need a full side to compete in the Champions League. Every Irish team that's ever done well has had a full available selection. I know when we went over, we were missing 3 or 4 players. We did okay. We were really happy with our results, winning 2 out of the 3 games, but would we have made a difference to the full squad? We'd have given ourselves a better chance. We might have edged in on a better goal difference than we ended up getting a severe tonkin from the Russians. If they can avoid a defeat. If they can hold on, make it tight for the first 60 minutes against the Belarusians, Peamount have the players that can sneak a goal. Whether it's Karen, whether it's some of the girls in the attacking options, I think they have the opportunity there to do it. It will remain to be seen how that pans out for them, but here's hoping. Be great to see an Irish team doing well. We've seen really good results from the men's. I know maybe not the results we were looking for last night with Pats, and I don't quite know how both our Shamrock Rovers are doing right now at this moment. They're in action, and they were 2-0 down from the first leg, or is it 2-0 down from the first leg? I'm not quite sure, but just taking a quick look at the scores online. In terms of that, Shamrock Rovers it's 4-0 down from the first leg, and it's 0-0 approaching half time.
The only thing for Rovers is Rovers are guaranteed.
But it's been pretty stellar. Yeah, it's been pretty stellar from them this year, and they're back in a group stage. It'd be great to see a women's side doing that as well. So our hopes this year rest on Peamount. They're off to Croatia, as we said, in about 4 or 5 days for that game this day next week, I think, give or take a day or two. It promises to be an exciting weekend for them anyway over the course of the next few weeks. But let's talk about the fixtures before we do finish. That one game, of course, did put Galway back in third place on the league table. We did show it to you there. We'll bring it back for a second. Galway, those 9 points and 6 points with those 2 games in hand against Shels and Athlone. Should they win them, they're right back in the hunt. But this weekend's games sees Wexford travel to LOIWomen for a 3 p.m. kickoff in the Bowl in Belfield. Galway United and Sligo Rovers in AMDC Park at 5. Also at 5, Peamount and Shamrock Rovers, a Southside derby. Treaty and Cork in a Munster derby. And Bohs and Shels live on TG Car at 7:35 in Dalymount Park. The one thing that screams out at me in these fixture list, Aaron, is why wasn't this round the midweek round when it was played? All of these games more or less suit a derby basis. Nobody has too far to travel. Wexford DLR is probably the furthest, and that's not even that bad. This should have been the round of games that are played midweek.
Did we have an official midweek round of games this year?
There was a couple of games earlier on in the season.
I think they were only rearranged games this year. I don't think we actually had an official round of midweek games this year, but you are dead right. They're the sort of games that
it screams midweek games, these.
Like, because you're looking at a lot of the games would have been rearranged games and stuff like that. I also would expect that there's a couple of rearranged games. I think we could see one of them being played when the cup semi-final is on as well. That weekend as well, but these are all reasonable.
I'm even thinking about just and again, I'm just talking out loud on this, but you look at those fixtures. You've got DLR versus Wexford in the Belfield Bowl. You've got a student population right on campus for that game. Galway United, AMDC Park. You're a short walk down from University of Galway. Treaty United, UL's just out the road, LIT as well, or whatever they call it now, TUS I think it's called now. Bohs and Shels just down the road from DCU, both teams. You could really have a fantastic one day a year season. If it's this time of the year, it's back to college, or maybe earlier in the season, it's kind of a ladies'
students' night.
You can make it a ladies' students' night and get all your ladies' football teams from around the college. You play it on you couldn't do it on a Wednesday night after college games because the girls would have been playing both, but you could make it a really good event that every single schoolgirl club in the region comes into and just make a really big night nationally out of it. The FAI, you can take that idea, the League of Ireland, Mark Scanlon, you can take that idea. I won't even charge you.
They need to do something. Attendances have dropped woefully lately.
But we need to start promoting the games again.
Like you even look at Shels Rovers, Rovers Shels, you're like 300 odd. I'd say more than half of them are probably Shels fans.
Yeah.
You look at Shels Athlone, I think there was only 329 when Shels played Athlone in Talca Park, first versus second. Like, it's just the attendances just aren't there, and like they need to do something at this stage.
Yeah, no, and I think it needs to be a centralized effort. We can't rely on the club because they're already stretched so far. The FAI made a profit of 3.5 million last year after paying off 8.5 million in debt. I think they're the numbers that I read in the reports online during the week. So essentially, they made a trading profit of about 12 million last year. Surely we can find a budget to promote these games. Surely we can find a budget to hire a member of staff or two. I know Mark Scanlon is probably campaigning for that internally in the FAI. Something needs to happen. The support needs to be there to promote these games. The interest is there. People want to go to these games. We're seeing it in terms of social media coverage. We're seeing it in terms of the way these girls present themselves and how the standard of the game is increasing. we need to back that with proper marketing budgets. Anyway, I could talk about that all night. It frustrates the hell out of me. Let's talk about the fixtures next weekend. Where are you going to be? What's your thoughts on the games in question?
There's only one game I can be this weekend, unfortunately due to work commitments. I would have loved to get to the. I would have loved to get to the bowl on Saturday afternoon and then get across to Dalymount, but unfortunately I can only get to Dalymount due to work commitments. So that's where I'll be. I'm expecting a big crowd there. Bohs are probably one of the teams that consistently draw that crowd with the kids in, even things like the free ice creams they've done multiple times that they've done this season. I expect we get a decent crowd for that. If you're on predictions, you're probably looking at one away Wexford to win, Galway to win, Peamount Rovers. I think it'll be a draw. Treaty Cork is a bit of a pick'em. I'm unsure how that'll go. I think that just depends on who shows up better on the day. They're two very even match teams, and I would expect Shels to be Bohs.
Yeah, of course, a Treaty win will see them leapfrog over Cork on goal difference. Probably, as you said, very even matched. A win would nearly just even off that league table as well for Treaty. But
did Treaty beat Cork earlier this season? I think.
I can check it quickly. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head, to be honest, but just waiting on the website here to catch up. Past meetings in the Women's National League.
Yeah, Treaty beat them 3-0.
Yeah,
3-0, and that was the game that was live on TG Carher when they played in the Cross. So, like, Treaty probably be favourites, but I think it's a different Cork team now to when they played earlier in the season.
Yeah, 2 goals from Delena Friesen and the first one from Katie Lawley set them up for a 3-0 victory down there. But yeah, it is a long time back since that game took place in early May, so we're nearly 4 months on. Plenty of water under the bridge, and hopefully for Cork City they can put up a better show than that at the weekend. Listen, that's pretty much it for this week. Anything else before we wrap up? What are we looking forward to over the next week or two? Who do you think is going to win the league if you had to put your neck on the block right now? If you put all your money on.
Do not go there, because I've literally been having conversations in the last 2 days trying to figure out what I'm going to do the last 2 days, the last 2 weekends of the season. I'm literally trying to figure it out right now, because at the minute I think I potentially have to be in Galway for the last day of the season.
Okay, that's a brave statement. Is that Galway at loan, is it?
That's Galway at loan.
It'd be a good game, whatever's happening on the other side of the Shels game. Listen, Aaron, as always, pleasure for your company this week. We will be back again next week with episode 20 for season 4 of the League of Ireland National. What is it called nowadays? I can't remember. It's the Women's Premier Division. And it's been too long a day, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, another exciting weekend of action coming up. All the games, of course, live on LOI TV. You can watch them for free if you've got a season pass. I think they're €5 for games if you don't, but well worth checking out all of those games. Hopefully you get to see them all this week. There was a bit of a glitch in the Cork game and unfortunately left us without pictures on that goal. We can hear it happening, but we just can't quite see it. Aaron, we'll be back next week. I will chat to you then.